All right, so today I want to look at some of the straighter, almost understable, but just straight mid-ranges that are kind of out there on the market, and I'll kind of add a few in some later videos, but we're going to go through some of the more popular ones of old, one of the more popular ones now, and then one of the ones that I've seen people mention, and when I saw the way it looked really good. So we're going to look at the Mako3, the Simon Lizotte Mindbender, and the Thought Space Athletics Pathfinder. And we're going to see how they fly, both Anhyzer, Hyzer, just kind of straight down. We're going to look at a few tunnel shots to see what kind of fade and finish they have, and then a few smaller approach shots. So we'll see which one's kind of right for us. Okay, so after throwing these a little bit and a little out here in the wind, which for a disc like this I would probably not throw, we'll talk about how they feel first. So first, the Mako. I feel like this is the one everyone knows, tried and true, super straight. The Star plastic, it just feels good. It's grippy, pretty gummy, flexible. It's decently cold out, and it doesn't feel too bad at all in the hand or tight or stiff. It has that same just rounded edge that you'd see out of a pretty straight or understable mid-range. And then we get into the Mindbender, which we've all seen reviews for. Had a C-line before, but this metal flake does have a lot more give to it. It also has that rounded edge that you'd find out of those understable mid-ranges to straight mid-ranges. I think this is a bit gummier and more grippy than the Star plastic from the Mako3. Their edges look pretty much identical. And then you get into the Thought Space Pathfinder. Now, obviously, it just looks really good. I've seen and heard a lot about Thought Space and their creativity, design, plastic type. It's really cool. But you'll see at the edge, this actually has a bit more of a drop off, more like an MD3 would have. It's also grippy, just slightly less grippy than the Mindbender, but it just feels good, looks good, and awesome looking disc. And so for some of our first throws, I was only going to do about a 300 to 320 Hyzer. The Mako, you see it, I try to pump it out as hard as I could, and then it just carried pretty straight on a slight Hyzer for a long time with a really soft finish. It actually didn't have the swing I expected, but there was a slight headwind, so that probably didn't help at all. Mindbender, same idea. I even threw, I think, a little up, and same thing. Hyzer just flipped and stayed straight and held that line for a really long time on Hyzer, and didn't actually have a whole lot of swing at the end. But then the Pathfinder, which we kind of said would probably be a bit more stable, it went out and held straight for quite a while, but then you'll immediately see that it actually does fade out into a fade part of the flight path, whereas the other two stayed relatively straight and just soft finish. And then we went on some Anhyzer, and you see with the Mako, you can actually throw these pretty flat with just slight Anhyzer pretty high. The design of it's just going to push it out and continue to carry right for quite a long time. The Mindbender had a bit more of a drastic angle on it as opposed to the Mako, and so you see that it has nothing in it to come out at the end. So when you put too much Anhyzer on these more just straight mid-ranges, they're just going to hold that line and die straight into the ground and have nothing to pull it out at the end. But the Pathfinder, again, is kind of seems to be the different one of the bunch, where it did have a bit more of an angle, but you see that throughout its flight path, it actually does fight out into a straight fade finish there at the end. And so then we get into just trying to pump it. I think it was about 330, 350 straight, but again, slight headwind, but this is where I think we're going to be able to see the stability of these discs. And so we get into the Mako. It's not as understable as I once expected it to be, as long as you throw it right, but this Mako just flew straight, flipped up, and had just a slight turn, and then just straight fade finish. But this Mindbender seems to be, of the three, the most understable of them all. It did, like, even on more Hyzer, flip up. It just turned out at the end of the flight path. And so it's not a bad thing, it just depends on what you're looking for. For me, I do want one that has a little more turn, since I have the MD3 right next to this and an Origin on the other side. And then the Pathfinder, same thing. You see you can kind of pump into it pretty hard, and it flips up straight and just holds, and then still has a more faded finish than the other two discs. And then we get into some of the more narrow lines. So this first one's about a 40-foot gap, 290, 300 feet. And the Mako, same idea. It just flips up straight and carries with such a small turn and then finishes straight, which is really nice for a tunnel shot like that. Mindbender, same thing. It actually just flies more like the Mako with a little bit more understability, just more controllable. And so that was nice. And then the Thought Space, and then the Pathfinder, same idea. I didn't think I could Hyzer this and let it flip up as easily, so it was a slight Hyzer, almost flat, and then just push straight. And then we went into 260 foot, super tight, about 25 foot gap, and a 12 foot ceiling. We want to try to see how much effortless glide these have in such a tight shot. And so you'll see that with the Mako, it just has a slight flip up, carries super far, and then just finishes flat and straight. Same with the Mindbender, flipped up, carried, and had its little turn, so you can see the understability compared to the Mako, and then just finished straight as we thought. And then the Pathfinder, this one, knowing I wasn't going to throw it as hard, I did put it a little flatter, and you see it just kind of carry straight for quite a while, and it did finish a little more left than the other two. And then just a small approach shot. You see it's just nice and flat, holds whatever lines, the Mako holds whatever line it's on, and then just finishes nice right there in front of the camera. Mindbender, same thing, just flies straight, holds its line, and then finishes out at the end because I did put a little too much Anhyzer on it. And then the Pathfinder, that one throwing it a bit harder because of its stability, just a little, and then even at the end trying to come out of its turn. And so my overall thoughts are that, at least in terms of stability, I would say the Mindbender is the most understable of the three. Doesn't make it unusable in any way. The Mako is the middle of the bunch, the Mako3, and then this Pathfinder is the more stable of the three. I know that most people I've seen in some threads say the Mako is just the more affordable version of all of these, and so I can understand why people like them, why people want them. And if I was an Innova guy, this would definitely be in the bag. But I'm a Discmania guy, and compared to the Origin and or the regular C-Line MD1, I like the Mindbender the most because it actually has the understability I'm looking for in that 5500 slot, but it's not as understable as the Origin. And so if you've thrown a Mako and you found that you actually want a little more understability, but not so far as a Fuse or a Origin, then this Mindbender would be the one. And then if you find yourself constantly turning over a disc like this, that obviously, of course, could have to do with some form and just angle control, but you could also just go with the Thought Space Athletics Pathfinder, just to give yourself a bit more margin for error. But overall, again, trying to be unbiased, I think the Thought Space Athletic disc looks the best. I think the Mako3 is the budget disc of the three, but I think the Mindbender just looks great, and I like the understability of the Mindbender in this slot. And of course, I think of the three, it feels the best in the hand. And so let me know what you guys think, and if there's any other straight mid-ranges you think I should keep an eye out for when I'm out looking. And yeah, thanks for watching.